Welcome to the channel. Tonight's HFY sci-fi story begins not with a war or a battle, but with a question, one so simple, so human, that it shook an empire among the stars. The Galactic Council had long studied humanity from afar, fascinated and terrified by their strange resilience, their compassion in chaos, and the fire in their hearts. But one among them, a young alien princess named Sarathia of the Elyndran Dominion, could not understand the mystery that defined the species called human. When her tutors described how they multiply, she didn't laugh. She frowned, curious. Not through cloning, not by command, but through emotion, through something the humans called love. To her, it was both science and madness. No other race risked their lives for affection, or built families from shared pain. They connect, her mentor said, with feelings stronger than gravity. Those words haunted her. And in that moment, curiosity became destiny. Sarathia's ship hovered above a blue world called Earth. Below her, oceans rolled like liquid glass and cities glittered like stars scattered on land. She had watched the humans rebuild after countless wars. The Galactic Council believed they were still fragile, new to the stars, emotional, unrefined, but Sarathia saw something else. They laughed after loss. They forgave enemies. They held hands under skies scarred by fire. To her kind, such behavior was weakness. To her heart, it was strength. And so, one night, she broke the law of observation and descended into the human world herself. She cloaked her luminous form in the image of a human woman and landed on a quiet desert plain under a storm of falling stars. She found herself in a small settlement, dusty and forgotten, where the night hummed with cicadas and neon signs flickered over an old workshop. Inside, a man worked alone, Ethan Cross, an engineer who once built satellites for the Terran Alliance before losing everything in a trade war. He was repairing a machine when she stepped into his light. Her skin, pale from the glow of her ship, shimmered for a moment before fading into human tone. Her voice trembled as she spoke her first words to a human. "I wish to learn how your kind multiplies." Ethan blinked, thinking it a strange joke. But when he saw her silver eyes gleam with honesty, his heart stuttered. She wasn't mocking him. She truly wanted to know. He poured her tea, half laughing, half stunned, and began to explain not the biology, but the humanity behind it, the connection, the trust, the vulnerability. She listened like a scholar, every word absorbed, but her gaze lingered on his trembling hands and the warmth in his voice. She didn't yet understand why his heartbeat echoed so loudly in her mind. Days turned to nights. She returned to his workshop often, asking endless questions about humans. Why they hold each other when afraid, why they smile through pain, why they cry when touched by kindness. Ethan answered patiently, sometimes with words, sometimes with silence. And every time their eyes met, her pulse changed. She tried to study it scientifically, mapping emotion as energy, but there were no formulas. The first time their hands brushed, her skin glowed faintly, and Ethan froze. "You're not from here, are you?" he whispered. She didn't deny it. "I'm from a place where emotion is forbidden," she said softly. "But I think I'm learning." That night, as rain washed the desert clean, they stood close, two souls from different worlds discovering that warmth was a universal language. Her people eventually noticed her absence. The royal fleet came searching, their silver vessels blotting out the stars. When they found her on Earth, they ordered her return immediately. The High Council warned that her contact with humanity violated the ancient pacts. Yet Sarathia defied them. "You fear them," she said, "because you don't understand them." The Council's response was cruel. They would erase the human who had tainted royal purity. When she realized Ethan's life was in danger because of her, Sarathia made her choice. She activated her ship's shield and stood between him and the approaching drones. Her eyes blazed with radiant light, her voice trembling with both fear and power. "If you harm him, I'll show you what humanity truly taught me." And in that instant, the energy she had absorbed through her connection to him erupted. Pure emotion transformed into light. The drones fell silent. The council watched in awe as their princess wielded power born not of technology, but of feeling. In the aftermath, She was summoned back to her home world, standing before the elders who ruled the galaxy. They demanded to know what she had learned. She lifted her hand, and a hologram of Earth filled the chamber. The laughter of children, the sorrow of funerals, the warmth of lovers embracing. "You call them fragile," she said, "but they are infinite. They love in ways no weapon can destroy. They multiply not just in number, but in meaning. Their weakness is their strength." The chamber fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the council could not find a single argument against a truth that simple. Humanity, once a curiosity, became a symbol of something the galaxy had long forgotten: the power to care. Years passed. Ethan returned to his quiet life, never telling anyone about the woman who had come from the stars. But sometimes, at night, he looked up and saw a pulse of light in the sky that blinked in rhythm with his heartbeat. Somewhere far away, Sarathia stood at her palace window, her hand pressed against the glass, remembering the warmth of his touch. She had changed her empire forever, teaching them what the Galactic Council had feared to admit: that love itself was the most advanced force in the universe. If you enjoyed this HFY story about humanity, emotion, and the stars that bind us, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic sci-fi tales that remind us what makes humanity extraordinary, even in the vast silence of space. As the Galactic Council convened in their crystal chambers orbiting the twin suns of Virith, whispers spread through the halls about the Elyndran princess who had vanished among the primitive humans. To most alien dignitaries, humanity was still an experiment, a reckless species that burned its own world yet kept finding ways to rise again. But to Sarathia, Earth had become a living poem, a contradiction of fire and grace. While the council argued about policy and power, she wandered through the deserts of Earth in silence, dressed in simple human clothes, her shimmering aura hidden beneath the fabric of mortal life. She watched children laugh in dusty streets, saw old men fix broken fences with the patience of saints, and realized something unsettling. These fragile creatures carried something no empire could replicate. They lived not for control but for connection. Ethan was unlike anyone she had ever studied. His hands were rough from years of labor, but his heart was steady, his kindness effortless. When she asked him why humans continued to rebuild after every war, he replied quietly, "Because if we stop being human." That single sentence lingered in her mind for days. Among her kind, perfection was achieved through order. Among humans, perfection was found through chaos and forgiveness. Every night she spent with him, her understanding deepened. She learned how to laugh without reason, how to find beauty in scars, how to listen not just with ears but with heart. She even began to dream, something her species had forgotten how to do centuries ago. But peace never lasts in the stars. The Council's elite scouts, the Watchers, finally traced her signal. They watched from orbit, analyzing the strange energy fluctuations around her and the human she spent time with. When they realized her body was resonating with a human biofrequency, something unheard of in Elyndran science, they panicked. To them, this was contamination. If emotion could cross species, then control itself could break. Sarathia's mentor, Lord Vethar, arrived in person, cloaked in authority and disappointment. He confronted her one evening as she stood by the dunes, staring at the horizon. "You've forgotten who you are," he said coldly. "You're the blood of Elyndra, not some experiment of emotion." She turned slowly, her human disguise flickering away, revealing luminous skin and eyes filled with defiance. "Then tell me, Vethar," she whispered, "why do I feel more alive here than in your perfect palaces?" He had no answer because he could not understand what it meant to feel. The council ordered her extraction by force, but Ethan intervened. When soldiers in silver armor stormed his workshop, he refused to run. He had seen the fear in Sarathia's eyes and knew that if he left her, she would lose everything she had learned. Armed with nothing but courage, he stood between her and the soldiers. "She's not your experiment," he said. "She's free." They mocked him, one human against the might of the Dominion, but Sarathia saw something ancient in that defiance, something human that could not be measured by technology. When the soldiers raised their weapons, she made her choice. Energy surged through her veins, brighter than any weapon the council possessed. She extended her hand, and the air bent around her like liquid light. "You will not harm him," she said, her voice trembling between rage and love. The soldiers froze, unable to comprehend what was happening. Her energy field resonated with Ethan's heartbeat, amplifying into a burst of power that shattered the night sky. From orbit, the council ships detected the explosion of radiant energy and immediately retreated. It wasn't destruction, it was creation. The energy wave rippled through their sensors, rewriting the frequencies of their own minds. For the first time in their existence, they felt something they couldn't suppress. Emotion. Some wept, others trembled, and a few fell to their knees. Sarathia collapsed in Ethan's arms, her light dimming, but she smiled through her tears. "Now they'll understand," she whispered. He held her close, not knowing if she would survive the transformation she had unleashed. In that moment, he realized the truth of what made humanity feared across the stars. It wasn't their weapons or machines, it was their hearts. When dawn broke, the desert was silent. Sarathia's ship stood half-buried in the sand, humming with faint power. She awoke weak but alive, her body now something new, part Elyndran, part human. She looked at Ethan with awe. "You've changed me," she said softly. "No," he replied. "You just became what you were meant to be." From above, the council watched, torn between outrage and wonder. A princess had defied them not with armies, but with compassion. And that act would echo across galaxies. If you're enjoying this HFY story of forbidden connection, courage, and the unstoppable force of humanity, stay with me. The story is far from over. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for the next chapter in this cinematic journey through love, rebellion, and the power of being human in a cold and distant universe. The stars above the desert burned like silent witnesses as Sarathia and Ethan stood beside the half-buried alien ship, its surface cracked and flickering with dying light. The air smelled of ozone and sand, still heavy from the storm of energy that had rippled across the sky hours earlier. Ethan helped her to her feet, his hands steady though his heart raced. She looked fragile now, her once shimmering aura dimmed, her voice softer, almost human. "They will come again," she whispered, gazing upward toward the endless black. "The council doesn't forgive rebellion." Ethan smiled faintly, his face streaked with dust and sweat. "Then they'll have to go through me first." She didn't laugh, but she touched his face, studying the warmth behind his eyes as if memorizing the color of courage itself. In orbit, the Galactic Council was already in chaos. Reports flooded in from dozens of star systems, strange emotional surges, communication errors, ships abandoning missions mid-flight. The wave that Sarathia had released was spreading faster than light, a psychic pulse of raw empathy infecting every species that had once suppressed emotion. Admirals and diplomats panicked. "If this continues," one counselor barked, "our entire control grid will collapse." But others stared quietly into the void, tears slipping down their faces for the first time in their lives. "Is this what they call love?" whispered an old scholar. "This human sickness?" What they didn't realize was that the pulse wasn't just emotional, it was evolutionary. Something in humanity's nature had intertwined with Sarathia's energy, creating a new frequency that no technology could contain. Back on Earth, Sarathia felt it too. She could sense minds awakening across the stars, alien hearts learning to feel after millennia of silence. But the power inside her was unstable. Her body flickered with blue light, the fusion of Elyndran energy and human emotion tearing at her from within. Ethan worked desperately to stabilize her, connecting broken conduits, rerouting energy through the ship's life core. He wasn't a scientist, but he was human, and humanity had a way of fixing the impossible. As he worked, she watched him, realizing how small yet infinite he seemed. "You act without knowing the end," she said weakly. "Always," he replied. "It's what keeps us alive." The air vibrated as the ship's core reignited, sending faint hums through the sand. She clutched his hand and whispered, "Then promise me. If I lose control, You'll stop me. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. I won't let you fall alone. At dawn, the council fleet arrived, descending like silver storms through the clouds. Hundreds of ships formed a wall across the horizon. Ethan's old satellite receiver crackled with a broadcast, an ultimatum. Surrender the princess. Humanity will not be harmed. But Sarathia could hear the fear behind their words. The wave had reached them too. Some of those pilots trembled, unable to fire. She stepped forward, standing in the wind, her long hair whipping around her face. They're not our enemies anymore, she said quietly. They just don't know it yet. The council's flagship hovered above them, its hull engraved with ancient sigils of order and obedience. From its bridge, Lord Vethar stared down at her, torn between duty and awe. He activated the ship's main cannon. You've doomed us all, he said through the comms. Emotion will destroy civilization. She closed her eyes, tears glistening like falling stars. No, she whispered. It's the only thing that can save it. The ground shook as the cannon charged, energy crackling like lightning through the clouds. Ethan pulled her close, shielding her, but she gently pushed him back. I have to finish what we started, she said. Her body began to glow brighter, not in pain but in purpose. Every emotion she'd absorbed, fear, love, hope, sorrow, coalesced into pure light. The same frequency that had infected the galaxy now pulsed from her heart like a beacon. If they see us, she said, really see us, they'll understand. Ethan wanted to stop her, but her voice carried the weight of a destiny older than stars. She looked at him one last time, her smile trembling. You taught me what it means to be alive. Now I'll teach them. When the cannon fired, the world went silent. The blast struck the ground and dissolved into radiance, not destruction. The light expanded outward, a soft golden wave that blanketed the entire fleet. Every soldier, every admiral, every council member watching from afar felt it. They saw fragments of memory not their own, births, laughter, love, forgiveness. They felt humanity. The ships powered down, unable to continue the fight. In that blinding moment, the galaxy's oldest hierarchy cracked. Not from war, but from understanding. And when the light faded, Sarathia was gone. Ethan fell to his knees in the sand, searching for her, calling her name. Only her pendant remained. A crystal pendant that pulsed faintly, beating like a second heart. He held it to his chest, feeling its rhythm match his own. The fleet withdrew, silent and shaken, their weapons cold. And far beyond, deep in the heart of the Dominion, the Galactic Council began to rewrite its laws, not out of fear, but out of respect for the one truth they could no longer deny. Humanity's greatest power was never its technology or strength. It was love, the same force that had bridged the void between stars and turned an alien princess into something beautifully, dangerously human. If you're still here, drawn by the echo of her light, remember this. Every star you see tonight might carry a little piece of what she started. Like, comment, and subscribe for more HFY stories where humanity proves, again and again, that even in the endless dark of space, our hearts burn brightest. The universe felt different after the light. The stars no longer seemed so distant, and across the cold expanse of space, something had changed in the way minds touched the void. On worlds once ruled by logic and fear, laughter began to echo again. On distant moons, soldiers laid down weapons they had carried for centuries. The wave Sarathia unleashed had not ended. It had spread, a living current flowing through every being capable of thought. To the Galactic Council, this was chaos. To humanity, it was evolution. And to Ethan, it was loss wrapped in light. For weeks he wandered the desert, searching the skies every night, calling her name into the wind. The pendant she had left him pulsed faintly, as if responding to his voice. Sometimes it glowed brighter when he spoke. Other times it grew silent and still. He didn't know if it was hope or madness that kept him going, but he refused to let her memory fade. On the capital world of Elyndra, the council was breaking apart. The transmission from Sarathia's final act had reached every corner of the Dominion. Some called her a traitor, others called her the Awakener. Whole planets began to question the doctrine that emotions were weakness. Philosophers debated whether love itself was a form of higher intelligence. Lord Vethar, once her strict mentor, now sat alone in his chamber, watching the replay of her last broadcast over and over. The image of her standing before the cannon, radiant and unyielding, burned into his mind. He began to feel something he had never felt before: regret. He whispered to himself, maybe she was right. Maybe control is not peace. Meanwhile, Earth began to change as well. Strange phenomena appeared in the sky, auroras forming where none had ever been, lights that pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Scientists couldn't explain it. Some said it was a magnetic storm, others claimed it was alien interference. But Ethan knew better. He could feel it. Late one night, as he sat outside his workshop, the pendant in his hand began to hum. The air shimmered, and for the briefest moment, he saw her, Sarathia, formed of light, her outline flickering like a ghost caught between worlds. Her voice was soft, like wind through glass. "Ethan," she whispered, "I'm not gone. I became the wave." His eyes filled with tears. "I knew it," he murmured. "You're still here." She smiled sadly. "But I can't stay. The energy keeps me bound between dimensions. What we began is reshaping everything. The Council, even my people, they're feeling now. You've changed them." The Galactic Council tried to contain the transformation, but emotions spread faster than law. Entire fleets refused to fight, their crews breaking down under the weight of empathy. For the first time, the council chambers echoed with argument, laughter, even tears. Terrified them. Yet some among them began to see a path forward. A quiet alliance formed in secret, a group of alien leaders who believed Sarathia's act was not rebellion, but revelation. They called themselves the Concord, dedicated to learning from humanity instead of fearing it. They sent envoys to Earth not with demands but with questions. Humanity, still recovering from its own past wars, was cautious. But Ethan met them at the landing field, wearing Sarathia's pendant over his heart. "If you're looking for her," he said, "you'll find her in every human heartbeat. She's part of us now." For months, the Concord studied humanity firsthand. They saw compassion born in suffering, courage born from loss, and a strange strength that defied every law of the cosmos. One alien commander wrote, "The humans do not conquer through domination. They conquer through connection." The Council could no longer deny what was happening. One by one, member species began to withdraw from their cold bureaucratic order and join the Concord. For the first time in galactic history, unity wasn't enforced, it was chosen. Yet amid this rising harmony, Ethan felt an ache that no peace could soothe. Each night he looked at the stars and whispered her name, knowing she could hear him but could never return. Then one night, as the auroras danced more fiercely than ever, the pendant around his neck flared with blinding light. His heart raced as he heard her voice again, clearer this time, filled with warmth. "Ethan," she said, "the wave is fading. My essence will merge with the stars soon. But before I go, I wanted to see you. One last time." He looked up, tears running down his face. "I don't want to say goodbye." The air shimmered, and for a heartbeat, she stood before him, more beautiful than ever, her glow soft and human-like. "Don't," she said gently. "Don't say goodbye. Say thank you. You showed me what life means, what love means." She reached out, her hand brushing against his cheek like starlight. "You didn't just teach me how humans multiply, you taught me how they live." As she faded, the sky erupted in color, waves of light stretching across the heavens like a final message. Every ship, every planet, every alien world that saw it felt the same thing. An overwhelming peace, a heartbeat shared across the stars. It was her farewell and her gift. Humanity had changed the galaxy not through war or conquest, but through a single act of love that became eternal. Ethan watched the lights fade, the pendant now still against his chest. He smiled through his tears and whispered, Goodbye, princess. If you've made it this far, take a moment to look at the stars tonight. Somewhere out there, her light still travels, reminding the galaxy what it truly means to be alive. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more HFY stories where humanity shows that even in the vast silence of space, the greatest power is the one that beats inside the human heart. Years passed, and the story of the alien princess became legend. Across the galaxy, her name, Sarathia, was whispered like a prayer, and humanity's small blue world became something more than just another colony-bearing planet. It became a symbol, a sacred reminder that life was not just survival, but connection. The Galactic Council, once a cold machine of order, had dissolved into the Concord, a coalition bound not by fear but by choice. Yet even as the stars grew warmer with the light of understanding, Ethan remained grounded on Earth, living quietly among the deserts that had once seen the beginning of everything. His hair had turned silver, his hands older, but his eyes still held the same steady light. Every evening, he would sit on the porch of his workshop, the pendant glowing faintly at his chest, pulsing to the rhythm of two hearts, his and hers, still connected across eternity. On the 100th anniversary of Sarathia's ascension, as the Concord called it, a fleet of ships appeared over Earth, not in war, but in tribute. They came from hundreds of species, all bearing the mark of the new galactic order. The air shimmered as light cascaded across the sky, forming a vast image, a portrait of the princess, smiling, eyes closed, forever watching over the world that had changed her. Ethan, now frail but unbroken, stepped outside and looked up, his heart aching with pride. The transmission spoke in countless alien tongues, unified into one message: to humanity, the first to teach the stars how to feel. Down on Earth, the Concord built a monument, a gleaming tower of glass and light rising from the desert where Sarathia had first landed. They called it the Beacon of Hearts. At its core rested the very pendant Ethan had carried for decades, now sealed within a chamber of pure energy. This glow never dimmed. Every few seconds it pulsed, a heartbeat that could be felt across the planet. People traveled from every corner of the galaxy to see it, not as tourists, but as pilgrims. They would stand in silence, listening to the faint hum that resonated deep in their chests. Some claimed that if you stood there long enough, you could hear her voice, soft, distant, whispering words of love and courage. But even peace carries shadows. Not all species embraced the change. Far beyond the reach of the Concord, in the dark corners of forgotten space, remnants of the old council plotted to restore control. They believed emotions made civilizations weak, that Sarathia's wave had infected the galaxy with chaos. A warlord named Kael'thar began to rise, uniting fleets under one purpose: to purge humanity and end the influence of the heart plague. He called it cleansing. He called it restoration. The Concord ignored the warnings at first, believing the age of war had ended. But Ethan felt something shifting. The lights in the night sky began to flicker differently, the auroras no longer steady, as if the stars themselves were anxious. One evening, as the desert winds howled, Ethan's old radio crackled to life. A message came through in a voice that chilled him. Earth is in danger. They're coming. It wasn't human, but it was familiar, soft, melodic, trembling with emotion. Sarathia, he whispered. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, faintly, part of me remains within the wave. I can see what's coming. The air around him shimmered, her form flickering like distant light. They want to erase what we created, Ethan. The Concord will need guidance. You must help them remember. Ethan clenched the pendant tightly. I'm just one man, he said. You're more than that, her voice answered, echoing through the storm. You're proof. Within weeks, the first attacks began. Small Concord outposts on the edge of space vanished without a trace. Fleets burned, their captains overwhelmed by a force that seemed immune to empathy. Kael'thar's armies called themselves the Purifiers, their ships bearing the old sigils of the Galactic Council twisted into new symbols of tyranny. They broadcast messages across the stars, cold, metallic voices declaring that the age of feeling was over. The Concord hesitated, unsure how to fight an enemy that did not fear death or pain. That's when the message came from Earth, carried by an old man's trembling voice. "You can't fight them with weapons," Ethan said in a broadcast that reached 1,000 worlds. "You fight them by remembering why we changed. Don't let fear turn you back into what they want you to be. Remember Sarathia's light. Remember that humanity didn't win by power, we won by heart." Across the galaxy, those words spread like fire. Soldiers stood taller. Pilots wept in their cockpits. Alien leaders who had doubted their faith felt something inside reignite. The Concord fleets united not in anger, but in purpose. They called it the Final Radiance. And as the first battle for the soul of the galaxy began, Ethan looked up at the stars one last time, whispering her name. "Guide them," he said softly, "just like you guided me." And far beyond the clouds, somewhere among the endless constellations, a familiar glow awakened, soft, steady, eternal. The heart of Sarathia pulsed once more, lighting the way for all who still believed. Stay with me for the final part, where the legacy of humanity's love faces the darkness of the old world one last time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for the conclusion of this HFY sci-fi story, where the galaxy learns, again, why the human heart can never be conquered. The war came not with silence, but with song. Across the galaxy, as the fleets of the Purifiers advanced, dark, gleaming ships slicing through the void like knives, thousands of worlds sent their final transmissions into the stars. Some sent music, others prayers, and on Earth, where the beacon of hearts pulsed gently against the night sky, the old radios began to hum. Ethan listened to the static as voices from every corner of the galaxy merged into one universal message. We remember. It was not a cry for war, it was a vow. Humanity had started something the Purifiers could not understand. Love was not a weakness to be erased. It was the one force that always found its way back, no matter how deep the darkness. The Concord gathered their fleets above the cradle of mankind. Ships from thousands of species formed a shimmering ring of light around Earth, each vessel powered not just by technology, but by purpose. Their energy signatures glowed with the faint heartbeat pattern that Sarathia's wave had embedded in the universe. But the Purifiers were relentless. Their ships burned through nebulae, their weapons cold and precise. They sought to restore silence, to strip life of its unpredictable beauty. When the first Purifier beams struck the Concord shield, the sky lit up like a dying sun. Ethan stood beneath the auroras, feeling the earth tremble. He whispered, "We taught the stars how to feel. Don't let them forget it now." Far above, on the Concord flagship Unity's dawn, the Council of Captains faced despair. Every defense they built fell apart under the Purifier's onslaught. But among them stood a young commander, a human woman named Mira Cross, Ethan's granddaughter. She had inherited his calm resolve and his fire. Around her neck, she wore a small shard of the beacon's crystal, glowing faintly. "They want to erase the wave," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Then let's remind them what started it." As the enemy fleet closed in, Mira gave the order to activate the pulse, a weapon unlike any before it, built not from destruction but from resonance. The energy came from the beacon itself, the same wave Sarathia had unleashed centuries ago. It was meant not to kill, but to awaken. Ethan watched from the surface as the night split open. A column of golden light rose from the beacon, piercing the clouds, reaching into orbit where the pulse ignited. For a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The energy cascaded outward, touching every ship, every mind, every soul. The Purifiers screamed as their neural links flooded with memories they never wanted to feel. Births, laughter, first loves, final goodbyes. Their rigid minds cracked under the flood of emotion. Many threw down their weapons, unable to bear the weight of the lives they had extinguished. Others wept in silence, lost between pain and understanding. The Concord ships held formation, channeling the energy, amplifying it until the entire galaxy pulsed with light. Then, something impossible happened. From the heart of the beacon, a figure emerged, shimmering, radiant, her form woven from starlight and memory. Sarathia. Her voice carried across every frequency, every world, every heart. Enough, she said. The word itself was peace. You feared love because you could not control it. But it is not meant to be controlled. It is meant to be shared. Her eyes turned toward the Purifier flagship, where Kaeldar himself stood frozen, watching in awe. Even you, she said softly. You are not beyond feeling. For the first time in his long, cruel life, the warlord's hand trembled. His weapons fell away. And in the silence that followed, the battle ended. The galaxy stood reborn. The waves spread again, stronger than ever, binding every world in quiet unity. The purifiers dissolved into the Concord. Their warships turned into carriers of aid and rebuilding. Sarathia's light faded slowly, her final words lingering in every mind she touched. Guard this gift. For as long as you remember how to love, you will never be lost. Ethan felt her voice echo deep within his chest, her warmth brushing against his fading consciousness. He sat beneath the stars, looking up at the sky that now shimmered with her light. As he closed his eyes, he whispered, "You kept your promise." The pendant at his chest pulsed once, then went still. Years later, the beacon still glowed, now the center of the new Galactic Concord, where humans and aliens lived not as conquerors or rivals, but as kin. Children from dozens of worlds would gather there each year to hear the story of the princess and the human, the tale of how the smallest spark of affection had set the stars ablaze. They would look up at the endless sky, filled with shimmering auroras that never faded, and they would feel it. The pulse, the heartbeat, the rhythm of something far greater than themselves. And though Sarathia's voice was gone, her lesson remained, engraved not in stone, but in every living soul. So if you ever stand beneath the night sky and feel something stir inside your chest, remember this story. Humanity didn't teach the galaxy how to fight, we taught it how to feel. And even now, somewhere among the stars, her light still moves, eternal and free, carrying the truth that saved the universe. Thank you for listening to this HFY sci-fi story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic tales where humanity reminds the cosmos that the greatest power in space is love.